Good morning. We'd like to welcome everyone to our Sunday morning Bible study. We're grateful to have you in attendance, whether you're in person or online. We have a great and interesting lesson this morning. David's return to Jerusalem. Um, there's some deep thought involved in that concerning some of the characters, Shemaiah, and the challenge it was for David, and even his return was a challenge. We look forward to Brother Tyler's lesson, and we want everyone to listen attentively to glean the things he would have us to impart to us to make us better Christians in the future than we've been in the past. Let us go to God in prayer. Merciful God, we're so grateful for our waking up. We're grateful for the opportunity to assemble this day to glean another portion of your holy and divine word. Pray for your choice blessings upon Brother Tally as he imparts your truth and that we listen attentively. Father, make application to our lives. We know your word is powerful, Father. Your word direct us. Your word strengthen us. Your word help us. Your word heal us. We're so grateful, Father, to be recipients of your word. And we recognize that every good and precious gift comes from you. And we don't want to take these things for granted, but grow in a way that we bring glory and honor to your name. Forgive us for those things contrary to your will. Strengthen us in the most holy faith. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
One, uh, we're on page 52, lesson 6 in our book. And I do apologize. I haven't seen the slides up here, but when I was looking at them again last night, they were very small on my at my end. So I hope that it is bigger, but no worries. I did bring my computer. Unfortunately, I do need to charge it. So that's why here and that's why the cord, okay? So let us get going. David returns to Jerusalem. How did we get here? Should be the question, because if you're returning from somewhere, you had to have done what? Left. You had to leave somewhere. So we're going to look at why David left. That's going to be our course of study after we read why David returns. So in the lesson book, the lesson text is 2 Samuel 19:9 through 30. A lot of what I talk about you'll find in 2 Samuel beginning at chapter 15 on up. And I'll give some of the verses. We may not read those. And finally, we're going to end with Ephesians chapter 4, verses 31 through 32. And we'll see that there's a lot to be said that we won't even get to today. But first, let's start with 9 through 30, and then we'll look at the introduction. Now, all the people were in a dispute throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, "The king saved us from the hands of our enemies. He delivered us from the hands of the Philistines. And now he has fled from the land because of Absalom. But Absalom, whom we anointed over us, has died in battle. Now, therefore, why do you say nothing about bringing back the king?" So David sent the Zadok and Abiathar, the priests, saying, "Speak to the elders of Judah, saying, why are you the last to bring the king back to his house, since the words of all of Israel have come to the king to his house, to his very house?" So let's look at that. It was evident that Judah was the last tribe to accept the idea of David's return to Israel. That's interesting, right? What do we know about David? Before David was king of over all of Israel, who was he the king of? What tribe? In Hebron. He was king of Judah for 7 years before he became king over all of Israel. David was from the tribe of Judah. So why would they be the last, say, bring him back? What happened? Where was Absalom's base? Where was his base of power? In Jerusalem, but among who? The house of Judah. The house of Judah. Where was Absalom, as we read in earlier lessons, where was Absalom when he came back? When he started plotting his ascent? He went to Hebron, right? That's where he was the strongest. Right in David's what? Backyard. So for David's return, he really needed to have the house of Judah. And we'll get to that later, but he really had to have the house of Judah on board with him returning to Jerusalem. And we'll see who were the people that met him and symbolically where they met him at. So let's get through with some of the review, we'll study, and then we'll have lots of time for discussion. Okay, there's where the slides get a little small for this one. And it says, David's return to Jerusalem. We got some things to talk about. Remember this saying, but now thy kingdom shall not continue. The Lord has sought him a man after his own heart. Remember that? Who was the prophet talking about? Saul. And he had found a man after his own heart, which was David, right? Now, David becomes king and does something which is very interesting to this lesson, and we'll see the very interesting thing about this lesson on number 1. It says, "Now therefore the sword should never depart from your house." Who was the prophet? Who was that being? Who received that? David. Why did David receive that? Because what he done to get Bathsheba, right? Okay, number 2. Now let's look at some of the things. David had 3 sons of interest here. David had 3 sons of interest, and 2 of the 3 we know met a violent death, basically by the sword, right? Absalom, in 2 Samuel 18:14, Absalom. What happened to Absalom? He was killed in battle, right? Hair was a little long, that's why I wear mine short. Actually, age got a lot to do with that. But he wore his hair long and it got caught up and he got trapped, right? What happened to Amnon? What happened to Amnon? Yeah, Absalom killed him. Why? He raped his full sister, right? Tamar. We're going to see something on the next slide. Tamar, right? Wherein all of this starts. That act starts everything on David's leaving Jerusalem and what happened with Absalom and David, right? Now, and then finally we know Absalom was, now David had another son, Adonijah, but that's really No. I'm sorry. Yeah, Adonijah, I believe, was David's son. But we don't really read much about him. He just kind of disappears. Appears. Appears. Anything about Adonijah that Saul had him killed. Solomon. So we see that it wasn't good. The sword didn't lead too far. And there we go. Why did Absalom hate David? What made Absalom hate David? Remember, we already said it, Tamar. Now, David returns to Jerusalem, but there was key players on his return. The people, remember in verse 9, all the people were abuzz about David returning. They would remember what he done to the Philistines. They would remember how he fought their enemies. But then there was the tribe of Judah. The elders, in particular, Zadok and Abiathar. And we'll see the other two names, Mephibosheth and Shami. We'll see what they done. But we got to know a little bit more. We'll get to know a little bit more about each of these men. Okay, I'm a little behind up here trying to read. Okay, I think that's it. There we go. Now we can see some of the players here. We see that Mephibosheth was Saul's grandson and Jonathan's son. Jonathan's son was loyal to King David. Jonathan was loyal to King David. We see that Zadok and Abiathar were the priests. They also were loyal to David, so loyal that David asked them to go speak to the rest of the elders in Judah. And we see Shimei, a Benjamite that cursed David when he retreated from the palace. We also know that he cursed David. He threw stones at David. He was very vocal when David left. And we'll see that what he plays, what level he plays when David left and when David returned. And we'll also see something else a little later in our text in verse 29. But if we were reading in the book, we read like the first four. First four, we said, but Absalom was anointed over us, died in battle. Now, therefore, why do they say nothing? Why do you say nothing about bringing the king? So King David sent Zadok and Abiathar, the priest, saying, speak to the elders of Judah, saying, why are you the last to bring the king back to his house? And he goes on in 12, you are my brethren, you are my bone and my flesh. Why then are you the last to bring back the king? Who is David talking about? The tribe of Judah, right? Bone of my, you are my bone and my flesh. And say to Amasa, are you not my bone and my flesh? God so do so to me, and more also, if you are not commander of the army before me continually in place of Joab. So he swayed the hearts of all the men of Judah, just as the heart of one man. So they sent this word to the king, return you and all your servants. Before we get to the end of the lesson, and we're not there yet. We still got a little ways to go, 30 minutes, but return you and all of your servants. Who was one of the servants, or who would have been in the party with David that fled? I would say David was like, 67 67, 68 when this happened. And the king for 2 more years, he was 70. And David died when? When he was 70, right? He ascended to the throne of all of Israel at 30 and ruled for 40 years. So he'd have been 70. Who replaced David? King Solomon, right? But at this time, Solomon ascended to the throne at 20. He would have been a 16, 17-year-old boy. Where was he at? If David had to flee and take all his family with him, he didn't get to take his wives, but where was Solomon? Interesting, huh? Where was Solomon? He was with his mother where? Was he in the king palace when Absalom came? You got it, the prophecy. So Solomon couldn't have been killed at this time, right? If Solomon would have been killed throughout all this nonsense, what was Solomon? Who was a descendant of Solomon? I'm sorry, not a descendant. Who was in the lineage? Solomon was in the lineage of who? Yeah, he was in David's lineage, but who else was in that lineage? Later on, Christ. Christ. In the lineage of Christ, if you go back, you'll see Solomon there. Because Solomon's lineage also was from David. And that means that Joseph is mentioned in the lineage of Christ, but his lineage goes through Solomon. So Solomon couldn't have been harmed or killed in all this melee, right? All right, we got there a little early, but we'll get back. Okay, so we see these four people are mentioned a lot in this lesson. And then we know why David wanted to secure. Why did David attempt to secure the support from the people before returning? And we know who the last tribe to accept David's return was. But why was it important to have the support of the people? I mean, he had enough army that had defeated Absalom. Why didn't he just go, my army defeated him, I'm back? Why was it important for him to get the support from the people? Especially the tribe of Judah. Why was that important? David was an old man, right? And that standard, I hope he wasn't old, because not too much soon I'll be David's age, and I hope I don't consider myself an old man, an older man. But why was it important? Let's just throw it out there. Maybe because David was looking to the future, that when I die and I appoint a king, my successor, I'm going to need the people to accept. Otherwise, somebody else would succeed, right? So that's why David, one of the reasons it was important for David to get the people's approval. Yes, Brother Anderson.
At some point in time, King Saul was king after David. There's a lot of problems. Look at it like others that are going to look at it. Yeah, probably a period of time. You're right. It's important that the names of Christ, the right person,
Be the king, right? Now, did David actually know all of that? We're going to see that David was a man was stated to be a man after God's own heart, but we're going to see he wasn't all the way there. He was still human. Brother Smith?
They have people have confidence in this willingness to follow them. Got to have that cohesiveness. I'm thinking about Solomon's son, Rehoboam. when he didn't follow the advice of the elders. He had something to do with it.
And
And, even though he was the king, that's that's a lesson I guess, about leadership here.
it's,
Support, willing to support.
okay, so now we come to a point on David's returns. What principles did David show that he was becoming a man after God's own heart? And I'll read in the text, and then what way did he still show he was not? And we'll see what got David in this predicament, going back to what got him in this predicament with Absalom. We know that it was the rape of Tamar. Yes, brother.
Yeah, the Raven Tamar, this was the Absalom.
Yes, exactly.
But also, Absalom humiliated his father.
Mhm,
Like I was saying, his compromise.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. After he got everything, but we're gonna stay on that Tamar track. There's something interesting about that Tamar track that deals with family dynamics and family interaction.
And any failure to discipline Hamlet, uh, they, Hamlet was their first son. Right, I think the second time, chapter 5, see what he did on his children. But Hamlet was his first son. And I don't know, I would feel how the name, he wasn't David, but the names he was his first son.
Mm-hmm.
The bottom line is, he failed discipline. Hamlet got a wide version of his stuff to, he's got real life. That's what he's saying, that it's not really coming back to do it, but one day we found out, he did find out that after that break, he found out that it seemed like he did that. He looked like that. Absalom being really upset about that.
Yeah. So you're right. You're right. I didn't want to get to this point early, but actually, it's a good time to get to it. What you all said about Tamar. Tamar and Absalom were what? Full sister and brothers, right? Amnon was just a half brother to her, right? So, and to him, not my sister. My sister, she looked good. I'll have my way with her. But then when Absalom reacted and killed him, he killed him after what? David hadn't done diddly, nothing. Didn't even take him to the woodshed, nothing. But Absalom killed him. What did Absalom have to do? Flee. He was gone for how many years? I believe it was 2. I believe it was 2 years he was gone. No, I'm sorry. He was gone for 3 or 4 years. And then we see this same Joab talk to a person that had influence with David, and Absalom got to come back. But what happened when he came back? David didn't see the boy for another 2 years. He didn't have an audience with the king for another 2 years. So that's when we get into this principle, when we get to these principles of what becoming a man after God's own heart was. Earl?
When we see that phrase, I think we look for perfection, but I don't think he's talking about perfection. I think he's talking about like David mentioned in Psalm when he said that I've sinned, and I mean, if a person is not just saying it, he recognizes it, and he's
Mm-hmm.
I think let's see that David, he told everybody does wrong, but you really repent and do better. And David was always just ready to repent when he found out he realized that he, I think
Yes.
it's more toward a lot of repentance and honesty in this day, acceptance rather than perfection. I
Yeah.
don't think the man has nothing like be perfectionist means that one's willing to be penitent and forget himself and others about that.
Yes.
I think if we read this direction, we perfection, that phrase.
Yeah, and that is true. But again, when we say a man after God's own heart, one of the things is forgiveness, right? And we see that when Absalom was killed in battle, and they told David mourned for Absalom, right? And and when you go to those verses in 2 Samuel, I believe 19, 20, when you go to those verses where he's mourning for Absalom, when he's really mourning for Absalom, we see true forgiveness. But he didn't show true forgiveness when he first let Absalom come back. He was partial. There was partial forgiveness. Yeah, you can come back, but I ain't going to talk to you for 2 more years. And what was Absalom doing in that time? He was out building up.
Position yourself to be king.
Exactly. So that's where the partial forgiveness came in. All right, you say I can come back to Jerusalem. You're in Jerusalem. I can't see you. I can't. Let me go on down to Hebron and start building me a base because I'm going to take your job. You didn't do nothing really. You just didn't kill me, but you didn't have really, you didn't express, because we don't know what David did or did not, but he didn't express the type of love for Absalom that Absalom expected when he was allowed to come back out of exile.
Yeah, I think in Second Samuel 15, verse 6, really putting it in perspective, said, and on this matter that Absalom always came to the king for judgment. So Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. So he came into the gate, he positioned himself, passed judgment on the people and gave them a free pass. He was really born to be.
Exactly.
He was chocolate.
Exactly. And while you're there in 2 Samuel 15, read 13 and 14 right quick. 13 through 14.
And there came a messenger to David saying, the heart of the men of Israel have Absalom. David said unto all his servants that were with him at Jerusalem, arise, let us flee, for we shall not else escape from Absalom. Make speedy to depart, lest he overtake us suddenly, and bring evil upon us, and smite the city with the edge of the sword. Verse 16, the king's servants said unto the king, behold, the servants are ready to do whatever, my lord, the king shall appoint. So his servant was still loyal to him.
Exactly. And why was David getting out of there so fast? Because what? Absalom wasn't going to have a bloodless coup. He was going to have a bloody coup. He was going to come kill everybody. And
Could you refresh, I remember, the guy who killed Absalom's brother, inspired great king. What happened to him?
I think he was killed, Brother Smith. I think he was killed. I think he was killed, but uh, his brother just got off scot free. That's in Absalom's view. He got off scot free. But I think the guy that helped him was killed. I have to look it up. Uh, we'll come back with that answer. Everyone, don't just take my word for it.
Yeah, that's a good question. We see the, I'm not here, but we see the council. So we see also what happened.
Mhm.
And someone counseled him. How to move those things.
And was he not from Saul? Was he not from Saul? It's Saul. But But we see David fled because he knew there was going to be a battle. But we forget David was what? A wise general, right? Most people might say, why did David leave Jerusalem and didn't fight? That wasn't a battle to fight right then and there, right? He was wise. David been in many battles. He know when to fight and when to run. He done a lot of running from Saul, right? When he could have killed him, right? But David, in his 60 some odd years, he had learned a lot of military strategy. And to have a bloody coup in Jerusalem where he wasn't really ready, that wouldn't have been a good thing for him. So it wouldn't have been a good thing for Jerusalem either, because David still had some other people's interests other than him at heart. He knew it would have been a bloodbath in Jerusalem, and that was what he didn't want or need. If he would have lost that battle, he wouldn't have returned under any circumstances, really, if we would just go through how battles are gone now. We're not saying what God would have done, but if we just looked at how the playing field was set, if David would have lost that battle, yeah, who would want him as king? Yeah. So we see the principles. What principles did David show? And that he was becoming a man after God's own heart. Let's look and see in her book. We're going to drop down to verse 22 to 29. And 9. And then we're going to read 30. But in it says, and David said, what have I to do with you, sons of Zeruiah, that you should be adversaries to me today? Shall any man be put to death today in Israel? For do I not know that today I am king over Israel? Therefore the king said to Shimei, you shall not die. And the king swore to him. Now, Mephibosheth, the son of Saul, came down to meet the king, and he had not cared for his feet, nor trimmed his mustache, nor washed his clothes from the day the king departed. How long was David gone? At least a year, right? How long was David gone? At least a year or two. This guy ain't even washed his clothes. Combed his hair, trimmed his hair. So it was then when he come to Jerusalem to meet the king that the king said to him, why did you not go with me? Mephibosheth, and he answered, my lord, O king, my servant deceived me. For your servant said, I will saddle a donkey for myself, that I may ride on it and go to the king, because your servant is lame. And he has slandered your servant to my lord the king. But my lord, the king is like the angel of God. Therefore, do what is good in your eyes. For all my father's house were but dead men before my lord the king. Yet you set your servants among those who ate at your own table. Therefore, what right have I to steal, to cry out any more to the king? So the king said to him, why do you speak any more of your matters? I have said, you and Ziba divide the land. So what was David showing there? Mercy and forgiveness. He was fitting to let this guy in Ziba divide all of Saul's land. He said, divide it. Divide it. I forgive you. You didn't come out. You didn't come out when I left, David could have came back and killed them all. He could have had that mindset. But we see that now David is actually growing and has grown into that prince of becoming a man after God's own heart. Because he's showing forgiveness now. Now, If he would have showed true forgiveness and not partial forgiveness, the Absalom, would we be here? Would we be here if that was the question? If we see David immediately forgave these and actually we're going to make them rulers over land. What did he do with Absalom? Get out. I better not see you. Get from my face. And then bring him back after 4 years and then don't see him for 2 more years. That wasn't really true total forgiveness. That was still harboring something. You killed my oldest son. Oh, you know you're my son, I'm going to have to punish you, but I didn't punish my oldest son. So we can kind of see Absalom's mindset. And we can also know that one of the things with kings, and it wasn't anything unique to David, but to kings in general, when they have sons, somebody's going to be king, right? Somebody's going to be king. But when you have multiple sons, you have multiple people that might do anything to make sure that they become king. So, and then David with his episode with Bathsheba, even threw the situation into a real bad idea because what was his punishment? Your household is going to live by this sword and die by this sword. Yeah, never leave, never depart from you. So, I mean, you're 67, 66, just chilling, waiting to appoint your son king, and now you got to run out the palace. Palace, right? So, what can we learn from mercy about this passage, about what David done? Here's he provided mercy. Here's one of the things we can learn in verse 30. Then Mephibosheth said to the king, rather, let him take it all, inasmuch as my lord the king has come back in peace to his own house. If we deal in mercy, and somebody get Ephesians 4:31 through 32, and we have the Christian response to this. But we see if we go ahead, Elby.
Well, I'm saying, okay, now let's see. Bishop, if you said it was the house of Saul, when you change dynasties, get your wife complete dynasty out. And so when David did wipe out Mephibosheth in Saul's dynasty, he showed mercy. Mephibosheth basically was there. And I see that mourning David law. That's why he didn't shave himself. And so it wasn't that he didn't want to. He was alive with David, but he couldn't go because of his physical malady. The idea is that David had shown him mercy, but then Absalom was aspiring to change the Davidic dynasty to Absalom's dynasty, and he was showing David any mercy. If he would take over, he was going to slay David. David just slayed everybody in Saul's land. So the idea is they were doing different things. David was benevolent to Saul's land, Absalom wasn't benevolent to David and his people.
Exactly. That was one of the things when I asked what would have happened to Solomon. I got a feeling Absalom would have wiped all of them out. He wasn't having that. But and to your point, and to this point also, why did he think that David was mad at him? Because somebody had told David untruth about him. It told David that he wasn't coming, and David didn't know he was lame. That's why this came about. Why did he go down to David to say, oh, king, I would have came, but I'm lame. But my servant came and told you something else. So he was afraid that David was going to do something to him, but David said, no, I done told you, go take all of this. Split it with Ziba. And what did he say? As a result of David's perceived mercy on him, David had been merciful because he said it. But when David was leaving Jerusalem, you had Shimei cussing him out and throwing rocks at him. He didn't see this guy. Where was he? Then you had somebody say something about him, but now David is coming back. And David, whatever they told me about you, I forgive. I've already given you this land. And what did he say to David? I don't want it. I'm just happy to be here with you. You. That's the second effect of mercy. You don't create enemies. You create people that love you when you show mercy. Brother Davis,
It's one thing that shows that all this stuff with me is that the love David did have for God. I mean, he could have killed Saul, but he looked at it and said, God is going to. And he had the chance to react the way he would react previously in his life. And he decided not to because he had respect for God. And this shows me the same thing when it comes to Christ. I mean, he left everything to come down and take on what we should have been punished. But yet, he took on it. And to me, it's some similarities about mercy.
exactly,
Go
exactly. Does somebody got Ephesians 4? Hold it for 1 second. Because Brother David brought up one of the key points that I don't even think I brought up. But when he said that David didn't kill Saul because he was God's anointed. Was David one of God's anointed? Yes, he was. What did they tell David to do with Shimei? Kill him because he embarrassed one of God's anointed. But again, David didn't do it. Forgave him. Forgave him. Right? They were telling him, kill him. You were one of God's anointed, and hey, Sister Phillips, good to see you. You're one of God's anointed, and this guy disrespected you, threw rocks at you. But David didn't take the bite. No, I won't. Well, so read Ephesians 4:31 through 32.
Let all bitterness, wrath, anger, and clamor, and evil speaking, put away from you with all malice. Be kind one to another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, hath forgiven you.
Exactly. That was the question. Why did we still know that David didn't meet all the requisites? What did David do for Solomon? What did he make Solomon promise him when he anointed him king? Anybody? No. What did he right when he anointed Solomon? Solomon had to give him a promise that he would kill somebody, right?
Shema was all right as long as he stayed within the confines. But once he left those confines, then Solomon had liberty to kill him.
Yeah.
And that he did for some reason. He left the confines.
Okay.
Boundary that we set. Solomon.
Okay. And that was one. Anybody else? Who was the captain of the troops? And he was aligning himself with which son to be king? He was aligning himself with which son to be king? It wasn't Solomon. Exactly. So David made Solomon promise he would kill that guy. So he would secure his kingmanship. So we're going to have to cut it right here. Here. Hope that this was about as clear as mud. But stay with Ephesians 4:31 through 32. And That way, we will really reap the benefit of forgiveness and mercy. That's this blessing. Sure.